Am I overreacting for considering divorce after my wife and her family broke my trust? My wife, Emily, and I have been married for 5 years. We've built a life together, and I always thought we had a solid foundation. We'd gone through the usual challenges, financial strains, work stress, and the occasional disagreement, but nothing had ever made me seriously doubt our future together. That is, until 2 weeks ago. What I discovered then has shaken me to my core, and now I find myself questioning whether our marriage can survive this betrayal. Let me start by explaining a bit about our relationship and Emily's family. When we first met, I was drawn to the closeness of her family. They were always together holidays, birthdays, even regular Sunday dinners. I admired how tightly knit they were, and initially, it seemed like a beautiful thing. In contrast, I grew up in a quieter household. My family wasn't distant, but we didn't have the same level of constant interaction. Family gatherings were more occasional, typically reserved for special holidays or milestones. It was just the way it was, and I didn't think much of it. When Emily and I got serious, I understood that her family would play a larger role in our lives. I didn't mind. If anything, I welcomed it. I wanted to be supportive of her and accepted the fact that family was a big part of her identity. Her parents, siblings, and extended relatives would often pop by unannounced, and though it sometimes felt overwhelming, I convinced myself it was just part of the deal. They had strong opinions on everything, from the layout of our home to how we managed our finances. And at first, I kept my frustrations to myself. I figured that as her husband, it was my role to adapt to her world, just as she was adapting to mine. However, over time, I began to feel the weight of their presence. It wasn't overtly hostile, but it was constant. Their unsolicited advice started to feel less like concern and more like intrusion. Emily's mom would often offer suggestions on how we could improve our home or recommend I take a different career path, though I had already mapped out my professional goals. At first, I tolerated it, chalking it up to her wanting to help. But over the months, I realized that these suggestions weren't just helpful advice, they were demands in disguise. They came with a sense of entitlement that made me uncomfortable. Still, I chose to bite my tongue, telling myself it was all part of the family dynamic, and I didn't want to cause any unnecessary conflict. Then, about a month ago, things started to change. Emily, who had always been open and transparent with me, became increasingly secretive. She'd lock her phone whenever I entered the room, always turning the screen away. She'd whisper during phone calls, making sure I couldn't overhear her conversations. She started leaving the house for errands more frequently, often without telling me where she was going. When I confronted her about it, she would brush it off, claiming she was planning a surprise for me. I wanted to believe her after all. Surprises are supposed to be a fun and exciting part of a relationship, but something felt off. I trusted Emily, and I trusted her to be honest with me, so I didn't press her too hard. But as the days passed, her behavior became harder to ignore. I began to question myself. Was I just being paranoid? Or was there something more to her secretive behavior? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I didn't want to accuse her of anything without evidence, but the nagging doubt in the back of my mind was starting to grow louder. Then, last week, everything came crashing down. Emily was out shopping, and I was working from home when I received a Facebook message from a mutual friend. It wasn't a message I was expecting, but curiosity got the best of me. The friend had sent me a link to a private group chat, urging me to take a look. Feeling uneasy, I clicked on it, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Apparently, Emily had forgotten to log out of the group chat on our shared laptop. The chat was between Emily, her parents, and her two sisters. The conversation was not about anything innocuous, no small talk or family updates. It was a detailed discussion of a plan to convince me to sell my childhood home. This wasn't just any house. It was the home my late parents had left to me. The house held so many memories, and for me, it wasn't just a property, it was a connection to the people I had lost, a tangible piece of my past that I could never replace. Reading those messages felt like a betrayal of the deepest kind. Emily's family had been discussing a scheme to manipulate me into thinking selling the house was my idea. They were going to use emotional triggers, like our plans to start a family, to persuade me. I was appalled. But what hurt the most was seeing Emily, the woman I trusted most, actively participating in the conversation. She wasn't a passive bystander. She was fully engaged in the plan. She was agreeing with their suggestions and contributing to the scheme. And then there were the mocking comments. Her sister referred to me as gullible and too sentimental, while Emily's mother joked about how I wouldn't even know what hit me. The betrayal felt so deep, it was hard to breathe. What stung even more was the realization that Emily had been lying to me all along. She had been acting as if everything was fine, while secretly conspiring behind my back. When I confronted her, she tried to brush it off, claiming it was just a joke or no big deal. But I knew better. This wasn't a joke. This was a calculated effort to manipulate me into making a decision that I never would have agreed to if I had known the truth. I was devastated. My trust had been shattered not just by Emily, but by her entire family. They had crossed boundaries I never imagined they would, and now I was left questioning everything about our relationship. Was this the person I had married? Was I overreacting by even considering divorce? For the first time in our marriage, I found myself wondering if our relationship could ever be the same again. I had always believed that a marriage was built on trust, mutual respect, and open communication. But now it felt as though those principles had been violated in the most painful way possible. I felt blindsided, betrayed, and alone. I couldn't understand why Emily would allow her family to manipulate her into doing something so hurtful. And to make matters worse, she seemed more concerned about protecting her family's feelings than acknowledging the damage they had done to me. I found myself at a crossroads. Divorce was never something I had seriously considered, but now it seemed like a possible option. Could I continue living with someone who had deceived me on such a fundamental level? Could I trust her again after what I had learned? Or had our marriage reached a breaking point from which there was no return? I thought about the future, about the family we had planned to build together. I imagined what it would be like to raise children in a home where trust had been broken. Would I be able to provide that stability and security they deserved? Could I even look at Emily the same way again? I had always been a firm believer in fighting for relationships, in working through issues together. But this wasn't just a simple misunderstanding or a disagreement. This was a betrayal of trust on a level that left me questioning whether our marriage could survive it. As I sit here, still processing everything that has happened, I'm torn. Part of me wants to try and salvage our marriage, to give Emily a chance to explain herself and earn back my trust. But another part of me feels like I'm fighting a losing battle. The damage may be too deep, the wound too fresh, and the lies too hurtful to ever fully heal. Am I overreacting for considering divorce? Should I give Emily and her family a second chance? Or is this a situation where walking away might be the healthiest choice for both of us? I don't have all the answers yet, but one thing is clear: I'll never be the same after this. and neither will my marriage. When Emily came home that night, I couldn't hold back anymore. My emotions had been building up for days, and I finally had enough. I needed to confront her, to confront the betrayal that had been festering in the back of my mind. I had the proof, those damning messages from the group chat, showing how her family had schemed behind my back. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine anymore. As she walked through the door, I handed her my phone without a word. Her eyes widened when she saw the messages on the screen. At first, she seemed caught off guard, almost surprised that I had found out, but I could see the guilt creeping into her expression as she processed the situation. It was only a matter of time before she admitted everything. I I didn't want you to find out like this, she said, her voice shaky. She paused, seemingly searching for the right words. But yes, it's true. We've been talking about selling the house and moving closer to my family. They've been suggesting it for a while now, and I thought it was for the best. I looked at her, stunned. For the best? I echoed, my voice tinged with disbelief. Emily, you didn't even talk to me about this. You didn't even try to have a conversation. You just went behind my back and made plans with your family without even considering how I'd feel. She looked down, avoiding my gaze. I thought you'd understand, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I really did. I believed that living closer to my family would be good for us, especially with our plans to have kids soon. It would give us built-in support, and we'd have help with childcare. I thought it was the practical thing to do. I clenched my fists, trying to control the surge of anger bubbling up inside me. So, that's it? You thought you could just go ahead and make this huge decision without even consulting me? You've been planning behind my back, and now you're telling me you were just trying to do what's best for us? Emily nodded, her eyes filled with regret. I never meant to hurt you. I thought this was what we needed, and I didn't want to worry you over something that seemed so obvious. It seemed like the right thing to do. But it wasn't the right thing to do, I shouted, the frustration spilling over. You didn't think it was important to talk to me, to include me in the decision? You didn't think maybe I'd have something to say about selling the house that I've lived in my whole life? This house isn't just a building to me. It's my home, my memories. It's where I grew up, where my parents raised me. You can't just decide to sell it without even asking me what I think. Emily's face fell. She looked genuinely remorseful, but it didn't change the fact that her actions had cut deep. I didn't mean for it to feel like that. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing what was best for our future. I shook my head, my emotions swirling inside me like a storm. You can't just go behind my back like that. This isn't just about the house, it's about trust. How can I trust you when you've lied to me? When you've hidden something this big from me? The words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of the truth. Emily looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant to betray your trust. I made a mistake, and I'll do anything to make it right. But even as she apologized, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too little, too late. I had been blindsided by the deception, and the hurt was too fresh for me to just let it go. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deeply this had affected me, not just because of the house, but because of the way she had gone behind my back with her family. For the past 2 weeks, I've been replaying everything in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. On one hand, I know marriage is about compromise, about finding common ground and working together. Maybe Emily truly believed that this was the right decision, and maybe she thought I wouldn't be able to understand or agree with it. But the more I think about it, the more I see how this wasn't just a simple mistake. It was a deliberate choice to keep me in the dark. It wasn't just her actions that hurt. It was the fact that her entire family had been involved in this scheme. Her parents, her sisters, they all conspired behind my back, making plans and mocking me in the process. How could I ever trust them again? How could I trust the people I had tried so hard to welcome into my life? As the days passed, I found myself questioning everything about our marriage. I had always believed in Emily, in us. But now it felt like the foundation of our relationship had been cracked wide open. If she could lie about something as significant as selling my childhood home, what else might she be hiding? What else had she kept from me? To make matters worse, Emily's family didn't seem to grasp the severity of the situation. Her parents, when they found out I was upset, tried to downplay it, brushing it off as just a miscommunication. They said I was overreacting, that I was being unreasonable by considering ending the marriage over something so trivial. Her sisters reached out to me too, calling me dramatic, accusing me of making a mountain out of a molehill. It made me feel like I was the one who was in the wrong, like I was the one who couldn't see the bigger picture. But to me, this wasn't just about the house. It wasn't about the physical property, it was about the principle. How could I stay in a marriage where my partner felt it was acceptable to conspire with others behind my back? How could I rebuild trust when the person who's supposed to be my biggest supporter was part of a scheme to manipulate me? At the same time, I'm torn. I still love Emily, and I don't want to make a rash decision that I might regret. Divorce is a big step, a life-changing decision, and it's not something I take lightly. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm letting my emotions cloud my judgment. Maybe there's a way to move past this and rebuild our relationship. After all, we've been through so much together, and I don't want to throw it all away over one mistake. Emily has been trying to make amends, doing everything she can to show me how sorry she is. She's been more transparent with me, answering every question I have, and even suggested couples therapy to address the breach of trust. She says she's willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. But every time I look at her, I can't help but think about that group chat, about the mocking tone of her family's messages, and the way they planned behind my back. At this point, I feel lost. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if I can ever look at Emily the same way again, or if our marriage can survive this betrayal. All I know is that I need to figure out what's best for me. I need to decide if staying in this marriage is something I can truly live with, or if the damage has been done beyond repair. So, am I overreacting for considering ending my marriage? Or is this betrayal as unforgivable as it feels? Every day feels like a battle, and the answer is still unclear. The only thing I know for sure is that I can't keep living in this state of uncertainty forever. I need to make a decision before it eats me alive.